Hey everybody, Starfish Sickle aka Daniel here. Now, I don't really do Death Battle episode reviews, so let's just say I was very happy with Kratos versus Asura, though I did find the inclusion of a what if at the end to be a little strange, being that it's the first one and all. And I really do hope it doesn't become a trend. If you want to know why, well, let me know and I'll talk about it in a different video. Now, if my social medias are anything to go by, I totally called it. People are arguing over lore versus visual scaling, and honestly, I love the chaos. I love to watch the fallout. I really am trying to get a head start on this prediction for a change, so I can focus on getting my Superman content out on time. So let's just dive right in. With that out of the way, let's move on to Ghost Rider vs. Spawn, continuing the trend of one Kickstarter fight, then one surprise, along with putting out a highly requested matchup. Not that this is a complaint, of course. And this is another matchup that makes a lot of sense. Two chain-wielding hellspawn that have turned on their evil masters to punish the wicked, both of which come along with a variety of more powerful forms. That doesn't even account for their purely 90s aesthetic. Both are also returning combatants, each with a W under their belt. And this is all nostalgia I can inject directly into my veins. And by nostalgia, of course, I mean my biases, which are heavily in favor of Spawn. In the 90s, I read the comics, collected the figures, something I still sort of do with McFarlane's Superman line, and I still have a soft spot for that movie. And that had my gut reaction to this fight going, Spawn wins, as my experience with Ghost Rider mostly comes from the Nicolas Cage movies. The only issue there is, I just know a little too much about Marvel cosmology, and with that, you can scale Ghost Rider pretty high, and that's before he even goes full angel on you. So I also decided to do a little bit of power scaling research on Ghost Rider, and it just started not looking so good for Spawn. But what about God Spawn? I hear some of you chortling. Yeah, people have used that line in groups and forums. The issue there is a lot of Spawn's best showings, at least when I read the comics, note I haven't in a couple of years, were either circumstantial or temporary, or, is often the case, taken out of context. That sometimes happens in versus discussions. And I only do the bare minimum of research for these predictions, as they are predictions for Death Battle and not full character breakdowns. And I also don't have time to check out every primary source for either of them, so please keep that in mind as I take a gander at these two. So here's how it looks to me. Both of these characters have comparable low ends and amazing high ends, to the point it can be sort of difficult to argue who goes higher. Then you have the issue of hacks. Both have an incredible amount of them. Powers that would put down almost anyone else, and both also have resisted some of the best tools in the other's toolbox. Spawn has his own version of the penance stare and has rewritten reality. Ghost Rider has powered through reality warping. Spawn has forms and feats you can argue are omnipresent, while Ghost Rider scales to some of the most absurd demons in Marvel, to where it is said it would take God with a capital G to slay him. These characters have both resisted Hellfire, Existence Erasure, and so much more it could take an hour to go through it piece by piece. I would argue Spawn has a slightly larger toolkit. He has things like the Sword of the Spirit, but that could also just me being less familiar with Ghost Rider. The way I see it, the fight is gonna break down like this. Ghost Rider is going to come in with Marvel scaling and having a longer history to pull from, and Spawn is going to come in with omnipresent arguments and maybe more direct showings as opposed to scaling. It's going to be an episode of back and forths, one where they're constantly countering each other. as each character has a long list of powers and just as many counters to their opponent. I can see it being a really tough match to talk about, let alone to call, but I don't do ties, so let's just rip off this band-aid. In my personal opinion, the winner is going to be Spawn. I know. Go ahead and get the comments out now. Trust me, I understand. Let's talk about this really quick. If you're a gambling person, I'd bet on Ghost Rider. After all, in the world of power scaling, Spawn isn't just being compared to the Rider, but every powerhouse Ghost Rider has ever faced, which includes the likes of Thor and Mephisto. He also stands against every statement of Marvel cosmology. It's truly an uphill battle. I've made my biases pretty clear, I feel. I admit that, and I can even see them easily giving it to Ghost Rider. This prediction really just comes down to my intuition, which it really shouldn't be worth much because I've only predicted 2 of these battles correctly so far. Here's my reasoning. 1. I think the breadth of Spawn's super forms and what they are capable of is clearer on the page. Now again, that's likely from me knowing the character better, but from even my brief research, it's easier to gauge. And while Death Battle has gotten better, they sometimes lack in the distinctions of classes like low complex, multiversal, and outerversal. 2. I think Spawn's feats of immeasurable speed and his omnipresent state are easier to argue for, and speed goes a long way in these fights, even if I think it's probably actually a stalemate. Overall, anyway. 3. I think Spawn has 1 or 2 more cheeky workarounds than Ghost Rider, and Death Battle loves those. I'm especially thinking of the Sword of the Spirit here. And finally, and this probably is cope in the face of me being wrong, but isn't it funny that the fight happening right after Kratos' W is another Spawn fight? I don't know, man. Call me conspiratorial, but I smell a setup for a rematch. Maybe coming as soon as next year. Anyway, if you enjoy this nonsense, please like, share, and subscribe. Comment who you think takes this and why. I try to respond to everyone. I really enjoy the interaction. I mostly make Superman content, but I do like versus matchups and do the occasional review or reaction to other things, and I especially like character analyses. That's been Starfish Sicko with truth, justice, and all of that nonsense. I'll catch you next time.